All right. Hey, John, we're back to do another recording for working sessions here. Looking forward to catching up on Editor Ninja and everything that's happened with you over the last couple weeks. I know we're kind of working on this idea to kick things off with a little bit of an icebreaker, something that we've observed around the web, mostly in the bootstrapping, entrepreneurship, marketing kind of space. And I think we agreed that we wanted to talk about this tweet, I believe it was, from Kevin Indig at Shopify. And the general sentiment here is, if you're a senior leader, you should treat yourself like an athlete, right? And I think you brought this to the table, so maybe you remember more details around that. But what's kind of the broader context for bringing this up?
Yeah, what's up, James? Good to see you, man. Good to be doing this live. So yeah, I mean, I've known Kevin for quite a while now, back to his search metrics days. And the tweet says, I'll just read it first, and then we can kind of discuss it quickly. He says, hot take: senior leaders should treat themselves like athletes. They need to rest and recover, work on their mental game, get in repetition, strategize their approach, improvise/pivot when needed, and overreach reasonably. I don't know what he means by that last part, but the first part, the rest and recover, work on their mental game, get in repetition, strategize their approach, improvise/pivot when needed. It really resonated with me. I thought it might be interesting to talk about because, you and I are both senior leaders, right? You in your role at The Good and me leading my company, my main company, Credo. But, we're both also now back to being individual contributors with Castaway and Editor Ninja. So, this resonated with me because, I've been in digital marketing for 10, 11, 12 years now, something like that. I officially consider it like 2009 is when I first really got into it. So it's like 13 years now. And, when I was younger, right, when I was at Distilled and at the agency before that, it was just like, it was hustle, man. It was hustle mode. Like I was young, I was single, no kid, like just cranking, working a ton, was consulting at the agency and then blogging on the side and all of that. And now, 12, 13 years on, like, I'm tired, I'm 37, I'll be 38 this year. Like, I just don't have the mental capacity, the same energy that I used to have. And it really resonated with me. The reason why this tweet resonated with me is because just leading a team, if you're tired, if you're not operating at your top, if you're not giving like strategy and you're not giving, direction and coming from a good place, you're going to lose your team, or your team's just going to be like, wow, this person's kind of all over the place, right? And if you're not, you're supposed to be the one driving the vision. And if you don't have the space to like sit back and really come at, really think about things broader, be investigating, new areas how other people are growing, that sort of thing, you're just not going to be an effective leader. And so I've really tried to do this with I take, most Friday afternoons off. I take some Fridays off, from time to time to go skiing or mountain biking or whatever. Like I really prioritize, I go on walks pretty much every morning, around my neighborhood, 30 to 45 minutes. Like I'm really prioritizing my time to sit and think and listen to what other people are, talking about, other podcasts, right? Just because that's what gives me the ideas. That's what gives me the energy to then come and show up for my team. So that's why that resonated with me. But I'm curious as to your take about, you mentioned before we started that, if you're going to be working for the next 30, 40 years, like you can't just burn the candle at both ends, right? Because you're just going to burn out. So yeah. I'm curious about your take too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's inherent in a lot of entrepreneurs to want to move quickly, right? And I think in some organizations that's even like a core value is like let's move, let's make progress. There's competition out there. There are opportunity windows that might be closing. There's new technology coming that could eat our lunch. Like fast is a competitive differentiator, right? But sometimes it can be like, okay, you can go fast for a while, but you can't go fast forever. You're going to break down, and you see that with athletes of all different types. Eventually, you have some kind of an injury, whether it's from volume of work or if it's from pushing yourself too quickly, too fast, right? Like a sprint. So, I think like recently, if I want to take Castaway seriously, if I want to also take my full-time job seriously, and I want to take my role as a husband and a father seriously, you have to play the long game, and you have to kind of make your peace with like, maybe we will move a little slower, maybe we won't make progress as quickly as we'd like. But what is the phrase? It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, right? And I've heard that said several times. It's like, well, the point of Castaway, the point of my work at The Good is the team. It's not just me. And so if we're going to go far and we're going to go together, then I think that's a more moderate pace, and that's something that has to be more sustainable. The way I'm putting that into practice, to go back to Kevin's tweet, they're talking about rest and recovery. They're talking about mental game. getting in repetitions. Like for me, that's protecting some time to take care of my personal well-being. And you and I have done this accountability challenge. Mine was all about showing up into the gym every work day, every business day, and doing that because I've neglected that for the most part for the last couple of years as we grow our family. And it's like, yeah, I mean, mental health, in my experience, is tied very closely to physical health. And when I don't let that stress out in the weight room or running or whatever else I'm going to do, then I kind of bring it home or I bring it to work. And it's subtle at first and maybe nobody notices, but if you let it get out of control too long, I'm not the type of person to snap, but I am the type of person where it's like to lose track of something, right? Because I'm kind of carrying that stress with me and I totally forgot about this important project that slipped through the cracks. Like that's not my normal character, but I find that when I don't get that energy out in a physical way in some way, then that tends to manifest as like hiccups at work or something like that. And I don't want to have that happen. The other thing that I think he says in here is about overreaching reasonably. I think that's like, to me, from the athlete perspective, that's like pushing beyond your comfort zones a little bit, right? Like that's testing your personal limits. And for an athlete, that would mostly be a physical limit, but it's like, hey, okay, my personal record is whatever, 10 seconds on the 100-meter or whatever, but like the world record is 9.3. So today I'm going to try to like really empty the tank and get as close to that as I can. And maybe I get to 9.9, but it's that regular, like not every day, but once a quarter, a couple times a year, like really trying to go as far and as hard as you can to remind yourself that like whatever you think your limits are, there's more left over there. And you just kind of have to like break that mental switch that's holding you back from that. So to me, in a business sense, like I took that as like, just create scenarios where you're comfortably uncomfortable, right? Like you're doing something you're not familiar with, you're pushing the boundaries a little bit, you're learning a new skill, something like that. It's like, or you have a high stakes, like sales engagement or something, you're trying to land a big client, you're in that conversation. Like that's the kind of thing that I'm taking away from Kevin Sweet. Maybe that's not his intent, but that's my interpretation of it, is like, it's good to feel uncomfortable sometimes and feel imposter syndrome and feel like, hey, there's a lot riding on this. And if I screw it up, like that's going to really suck. But like, that's when you know that you're growing. Totally.
And there's kind of those like smaller areas that you push yourself in, right? Like I've lifted weights for a long time. And so, you can push yourself too hard, right? And you end up sore and like you actually like risk hurting yourself. But you can also like doing an extra rep, doing an extra set, like something like that. You're not doing it all the time, but it is, but it is kind of pushing you to that next level. And then there's kind of like your ultimate line, right? Like, you can push yourself. Like I've flirted with burnout many, many times. And I've realized that basically like I know in order for me to not burn out and for me to be able to show up and to keep showing up, I basically need a week-long vacation every quarter. And that sounds like a lot, in the rest of the world other than the US, it's not. It's normal, right? When I lived in Switzerland, they get 6 weeks a year, plus holidays and all that. In the States, it's like 2 weeks. But, I basically try to take a month off every year. A week, right, every quarter, go somewhere, go to Mexico, go to Europe, like, go visit friends, whatever other state, like, and actually take it off. Because I know that like I'll push hard. I can push hard for 10, 11 weeks. And then I need to reset, right, to go into the next quarter. So I'm actually trying to take it like end of every quarter. Like I have a vacation at the end of March. Where I have one coming up end of June. And I'm basically trying to do it every single quarter. And then at the end of Q4 is always holidays. So I basically need to figure out like what's that one like end of September-ish. But because I know that like I'm going to push myself to that point, and then I need to chill. In order to like reset myself to go back into it stronger. Athletes obviously push hard for their whole like season, but then they basically have their summer off, right? And they always go on vacation and that kind of thing, right? I follow these like professional skiers that they're skiing super hard all winter, like November through April, May, like they're skiing hard. And then guess what? They all go to the beach in Mexico for 2 to 3 weeks, just like fully recover, So like, I think we need to think about that as well. Like that's actually how athletes work, right? They do push themselves. They do push hard. They push themselves out of their comfort zone, but then they also take that time, to step back. And so it's kind of a balance of like, how do you do it while you're pushing really hard and make sure that you're having time to sit back and think about strategy and all of that. But then also how do you fully recover once you've kind of gone through an intense period, whether it's an intense launch or something like that, right? A 6-week like software production cycle, and then a couple weeks of bug bashing and whatever. Like every company is going to be different, and every person's going to be different. But I think trying to find that balance for yourself and for your team is super, super important.
Yeah, and it's like I think a lot of people feel like they have to have it figured out from the start. And if you don't have it figured out, like you're somehow like you have the shortcoming as a person, but it's trial and error. It's like, try taking a long weekend. And if that's not enough, then take 1 week off per quarter. And if that's not enough, take 1 week off per month, or find a way to like get closer to that. But it's highly personalized and contextual to like your specific needs. Like, I don't know. And the recovery piece is interesting to me because I saw a documentary a long time ago about Ronnie Coleman, the power lifter. I think he was like multiple time Mr. Olympia. And even on the micro level, like the recovery that those guys go into, it's like you work out really hard for 2 hours in the morning, and then you like go home and literally just lay on the couch. I mean, they're fortunate that their whole job is to get bigger, get stronger, and like look as good as they can. But like he basically said, I don't leave the couch or the bed in the middle of the day, and then I go train for really hard 2 hours again at night, and then I sleep for 10 hours. And that's my life for like 9 months while I'm getting ready for this competition. And I believe I also saw a headline earlier this year, or I guess we're at the beginning of the year, so in the last 6 months sometime, that Russell Wilson, the NFL quarterback, spends $1 million per offseason just in recovery, in cold tanks, massages, like that suction cup procedure that they get, the electrostatic stuff, like nutrition, all that. The grand total is $1 million per offseason just to get ready for the next season. So if that doesn't put an exclamation point on the importance of rest and recovery, I don't know what does. And you know, like that's something where, you know, recently I've done a better job of protecting time to invest in my health and my physical health specifically, but still not great at that, like that kind of like quiet strategy thinking time, you know, like even I'm just like obsessed with podcasts, which is part of the reason that I'm starting Castaway, and audiobooks fall into that same bucket. But it's like, you know, I think the next step for me in improvement is to just like find a way to be at peace with like silence and thought. You know, I kind of feel this need to like fill every gap with learning and education. And at some point, it's just like you have so much clutter in your brain that you don't have any space to like organize that and actually translate that into action. And the balance of consumption versus like taking that action feels a little out of whack for me right now. So I think that's kind of going to be my next focus, is like, how do I just, you know, if I'm on the exercise bike for an hour, like how do I just be quiet, you know, and think about the business or life or whatever, instead of just constantly consuming, like, let me hear what somebody else's business is doing, you know, just scaling that back.
Totally. I mean, this is why I'm up at like 5:30, 6 a.m. every morning. Like, I've not historically been a morning person, but I've turned myself into that because I get that quiet time, right? And I'm an introvert. And so like, I need that time to really like, I need like an hour in the morning before my daughter and my wife are up to like really think and just like get into a good headspace for the day. And that's where I read, I listen to podcasts, like that sort of thing. I've been trying to not be on social media in the mornings, like super early, just so that I can focus, right? I'm probably undiagnosed ADHD as well. So like, I find social media super early in the morning just sets my brain in all sorts of crazy ways. But if I'm reading and just really like focusing, meditating, that kind of thing, I'm actually really focused for the day and able to get the things done. But this is also why, like, when I'm skiing, right, I go skiing by myself because like my wife will be skiing with my daughter, and then I'll go ski and I'll come back, take her over. Wife goes and skis. I used to listen to music or something like that while I was skiing, and now I'm like, no, I'm going to enjoy being in the mountains. I'm going to enjoy the sound of the wind in the trees. I'm going to enjoy the conversations I have with people on the lift, right? And not be like, oh, sorry, I have my headphones in, right? Like, I don't want to be that guy. And I think that's really like, it's a good balance to find, like the balance of like learning and thinking new thoughts and learning new things. But then also like, sometimes you just have to let it like settle in, and it just kind of sits in the back of your brain. And guess what? You're not going to hear like what's going on, you know, in the back that you're kind of processing like in your subconscious. If you're constantly filling the front of your brain with new things. You have to be quiet in order to hear that.
There's a trickle down effect to that too, where like everything you consume creates a new to do. You're like, oh, someday I should go in and do that technical SEO update that I've been meaning to do forever, or I should run this PR campaign or this book outreach campaign or whatever. Like, as the more you listen to other people's stories and expertise, the more you want to add to your pile, and then that just kind of, you know, accelerates that feeling of being behind or that baggage that you're carrying. So
it makes that shiny object syndrome worse. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, shout out to Kevin for posing an interesting question. And you know, I think like my only advice here, I guess, for anybody who is a senior leader or is like progressing in that direction, is like, the best thing that I found is put it on your calendar. That's the best way to protect it. Like, if you just say like, oh, I'm going to make some more time to do strategy, it kind of never happens because it gets eaten by everybody else. And we naturally want to say yes to a lot of things. In fact, you won't be able to see this if you're not watching the video, but somebody sent me a sticker here that says, nope, nope, nope. Let's see if I can get that to focus.
I like it.
And they're like, you need to say no more often. And I'm probably not alone in that. So like, put it on your calendar, block out the workout, block out the strategy session, whatever, even if that's just for yourself, and try to protect that time, because otherwise it just tends to not happen, you know? And yeah, I don't know. I mean, making peace with like being less of an individual contributor as you get into more leadership roles, that's been a struggle for me, because like I get a lot of value and personal satisfaction out of like creating things and doing the work. And it's not really a micromanagement thing. It's just like I enjoy doing that. So the more that I have to let go and make peace with the fact that like sometimes the meeting is the work. Sometimes the one-on-one with the mentorship and coaching is the work. Sometimes just putting the strategy on paper is the work. Like it's a hard, I wrestled with it personally. I don't know if you feel the same, but like sometimes when I'm just like, hey, my only objective today is to figure out where we're going as a marketing department, or like what my big campaign is for this quarter for Castaway, like that feels like wasted time when I should be in the code, or I should be writing, or I should be making video clips or whatever, or doing a sales conversation. Like, but that's work too. And yeah, when you can make your peace with that, I think you'd be better off.
I remember when I was at Zillow and near the end of my time at Hot Pads, I had grown my team from myself to there were 8 of us, me and 7 other people. And I had been in like 7 hours of meetings every day for like the whole week. And I had hired myself out of any of my individual contributor jobs. I was no longer writing content. I had a content manager. I had an SEO like lead. I was no longer doing SEO. And I was like, man, I've just been in meetings. I feel like I'm not getting any work done. I had this realization that I was like, wait, meetings are my job. Like, this is where the work gets done now because I'm in a leadership position. And that was fine, right? And some people were going to hear that and be like, oh, meetings all day sounds terrible. And like, it kind of is. But also, if that's your job and you're a manager and your job is to push things forward and other people to execute on it, like that is the work. So like, let's not say meetings are not work, right? It's not work for individual contributors largely because they need to have time to create. But like, if you're a manager, that is the work. Yeah, I think the only thing I would say before we get into updates, I want to hear what's going on at Castaway. But the other thing I would say is, if you think that you don't have time to take a day off, do it. Just take a day off. And you will prove to yourself that you do have time to take a day off, right? If you take off Friday, you take a long weekend, when you come back Monday, there aren't going to be any fires. I can 98% promise you that. And you're going to teach yourself that like you can take a day off and it is okay to take a day off, and then start scheduling it in and start doing it more. And the freedom you feel there is going to be pretty incredible. And also a way to get more margin in your day, in your weeks, is I do a time audit about every 6 months. So I'm actually doing it this week, where every 30 minutes in an Excel spreadsheet, I'm writing down what I'm doing. And then I'm going to say, okay, what did I do there that didn't actually move any of my bigger goals forward? So let's cut that out, right? Or what can I delegate to people? What needs to be done that can't be delegated? And I just like come to peace with the fact that like that's part of my job for the next 3 to 6 months. And figuring out, and part of that too is figuring out how I can delegate some of it. So yeah, I'm doing that right now. And this week's gonna be a little crazy because I was sick yesterday and didn't get a ton of work done other than like some creative writing, but I canceled all my meetings, that kind of thing. But I got some cool stuff done, which I can talk about. But it was, so anyways, just auditing your time and saying like, where's my time actually going? Because so many people are like, oh, I'm so busy. But when you actually look at what they're doing, it's truly busy work, right? And busy work is not good. It's just work that like is taking up your time. It's not actually moving the needle forward. So what can I eliminate? What can I delegate? Otherwise, like, what do I need to keep on working on that and work towards being able to delegate it or automate it?
And be honest with yourself, because I've tried that. It's really easy to be like, I'm gonna write off this 15-minute distraction because that's uncommon. That never happens, right? Well, it does happen, right? Like that probably is more common than you think. So write everything down and then step back when you're done and assess it with an objective.
Totally.
All right, I guess I'll jump into the Castaway updates.
Do it
first, and let's see. I'll start with some operational stuff. I've engaged with a couple of contractors to maybe do a new website. If you check out our website right now, as we're recording here, it's pretty awful. It's basically a one-page sales letter, and it could be a Google Doc, right? And it's got stock illustrations that are royalty-free and all this kind of stuff. And I'm surprised it sells anybody, but the fact of the matter is, like, it doesn't really sell anybody. I do, right? Like, it's personal network, it's outreach, it's referrals right now. And so I think I'm at the point now where it's like, historically, I would go into WordPress and I'd build my own site. But as this is something I'm working on the side, I've got a full-time 9-to-5 that I'm engaged with. This is the first time I'm really thinking about like writing a check to have somebody else take that off my plate. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I think it's the right thing for the business. So yeah, I'm evaluating like WordPress and Webflow, and I think I know what your answer will be for this, John. I think all your businesses are built on top of WordPress, and it is like the most popular website platform in the world. I'm kind of looking at Webflow just as like, as it's because of the nature of this project, like it's a good time for me to experiment with a new platform and not like have a whole bunch of risk associated with that. It's not tied to my salary, my job or anything. But I'm trying to be thoughtful about the limitations of both. Like WordPress can get bloated really quickly. Webflow can be a little bit more complex from a user interface type of style, and finding somebody to develop a custom Webflow site might not be as easy as WordPress right now, just because of the difference in life cycle and maturity there. So I'm weighing those two platforms, but the real update there is I've got one contractor that specializes in each, and the decision point I need to make is basically, because they're priced about the same and timeline and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, all right, which platform do I want to go with? And, just stroking that check and getting that project kicked off. But yeah, in the meantime, I think I'm going to make an incremental improvement with Card. If you're familiar with it, it's card.co with 2 R's. And that's just going to be, I already have that landing page done. I'm just waiting on a designer to deliver graphics. But I think that's going to be my step change improvement that makes progress in the next like week or so. And then I know that full website redesign is going to take 60 days, probably 30 to 60 days. So that's the operational update. I guess I'll pause there for any reactions.
I guess my question for you would be if you need a full custom website at the stage you're at, right? Because you could do with like a pretty good Webflow theme that someone else built, or a good WordPress theme, like whichever one you choose. Like you don't need a full 5 to 5+ K custom site. You can do it, and you just don't need that at the stage that you're at, is my take. But whether WordPress, Webflow, which one do you know better? Which one's going to let you, do what you need to do, right? WordPress can get bloated, but also doesn't have to, with a pretty simple marketing site, right? With a blog and, 6 pages, each one talking about your services, that sort of thing. But I haven't really played around with Webflow. Are they is it like a drag and drop sort of thing, like Elementor on WordPress or something like that, or is it harder to update? Because I like to get into the code as a front end developer, but
yeah, I would say, I guess for the listeners' context, I'm a fairly non-technical marketer. I do HTML and CSS and that's it. So my description of Webflow might not be yours, but I think it's fairly similar to Elementor in that it has some drag and drop. What you see is what you get elements to it, where you can drag a toggle switch and increase or decrease padding around an element or whatever. But it's also structurally presented in the same way that the actual code would be. So you have containers and divs and things like that. And so you have to be familiar with how margin works versus padding or something like that. And you have to be familiar with what's it called, an exact location versus a relative location for an element on a page and things like that. So it's a little more technical than any WordPress option, I would say. But at the same time, that increases the flexibility too, and it's not quite as limited as something like Elementor might be. I know somebody who's really good with Elementor can do pretty much anything they want. But to your point, I'm leaning towards WordPress primarily because and the reason I'm leaning toward having a more developed site is because I think content is part of the long-term play here. And I want a CMS that I can actually start to publish under now so I can see some results in a year from now. And I just think the WordPress framework with the SEO plugins that everybody knows about, I think that's a strong foundation to build that on. And Card can't do that. So they don't have a CMS option. So that's it's more of an investment now for the long-term effort. And if I'm going to build kind of a blog or a content effort, it just seems fair to pair a web design project with that.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I mean, I think, you could kind of go either way. I mean, people it's cool to dog on WordPress and to dog on the things that have been around for quite a while, but it's been around for quite a while for a reason. It works, right? Webflow's the same way. Webflow's been around for quite a while as well, and I'm seeing a lot more people using it for their for their marketing site, if I can call it that. Right? I used to hate that term. I use it all the time now, but there's a lot of people are using it now. When we, at Credo, when people are coming to us for looking for an SEO agency or something like that, right? What do you want? It used to be all WordPress, and now it's WordPress or Webflow. We're getting more Webflow projects and such there as well. So it's a good platform. It just kind of depends on what you need, right? With a blog and ability to launch new pages. And I think Webflow's SEO is pretty good out of the box, but that's something you care about, right? Ranking for stuff and driving in leads that way, then, it's a consideration to take into account. But I'll be interested to hear kind of where you land on that.
Yeah, I think I'll have that update the next time around. Just make a decision and move forward, basically, and know that you can always walk it back. It's not to your point. I can sell with a Google Doc right now. The problem is when it gets beyond me and somebody I know refers somebody, they point them to the website, and you only get one chance at that first impression, and you need to pass that credibility test. And I think what I have right now is it's okay, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Let's
And
see,
the
sales
card
and marketing
update, you
update.
sent that
Oh,
to
go
me.
ahead.
It looks good. You got some pricing
Yeah.
on there and that sort of thing. Like there's obviously a lot that you can do on that side, but it's a good like next, stair step, right? Shout out to Rob Walling. It's a good like stair
Right.
step, to getting to a full like new site that really like sells the service for you, but
Yeah.
it's a good start, right? And at the end of the day, it's that action that, momentum begets momentum, right? You have to start and
Right.
then that like, then the energy just kind of takes off.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Okay, so quick sales and marketing update. We're still hovering around 3,000 MRR on subscription services, but I just sold an interesting project. Basically, it's worth 3,000 by itself. It's a bundled offering. But basically, this person came to me and they said, hey, I'm doing kind of like these sales prospecting calls. So he does financial services. And he's like, I'm going to get business owners on the phone. I'm going to kind of do a discovery call with them, ask what kind of financial challenges they're facing and how they're handling those now. The loose objective there is to introduce them to my services and what I can do for them. But I'm leading with this idea that like, if you let me record it, I'll turn it into marketing material and we'll put it out to our audience. So your business will get in front of our audience. And then you can put that on your personal social media or whatever you want to do for personal brand building. And that's how he's presenting it to the prospects. So he's getting these folks on the phone. They're opting into this marketing angle. And he basically wants to have it be fodder for Facebook ads or, like long tail prospecting on his site and social media platforms. And I'm like, that's a little bit of an interesting angle. So, it's outside of the wheelhouse of what we would normally do. Like we present ourselves to the world as like turn your podcast into a bunch of promotional material to distribute across different platforms and channels. But when somebody comes in like that, I think the lesson here is you can specialize and you're still going to get opportunities outside of that specialty. So it doesn't, like a lot of people think if I just present myself as a solution for one specific thing, then I'm going to cut out the opportunity to land all this other business. But like those people still find you. And I think this is evidence of that.
Yeah, for sure. I see that all the time, and mainly in Credo, where I had someone this morning because we say like we basically work with U.S. speaking or English speaking agencies, right? Mainly U.S. UK. I had someone this morning from South Africa ask if we work with companies from South Africa. Like we don't mention South Africa, and they're curious about it. So yeah, like you can focus down, you can niche down, and they're still going to find you. Like you could even go with like content repurposing, right? For content repurposing for marketing, right? Like something like that. And then say like podcasts, blog posts, like whatever it is, right? Turn blog posts into social media assets, like that sort of thing. You can have kind of these various like niches, that like we'll repurpose this kind of content into this kind of content into this. If you want to message that, right? But you kind of learn that by people being like, well, you do it for podcasting, you do it for blog posts, you do it for sales calls. It's like, we can, we can build a process around that. So that's
the original
cool.
value proposition was like anything you broadcast. So if you do webinars, if you do workshops, if you do a conference talk, like it was anything that you broadcast, that's where Castaway came from. And I just figured we'd land a lot of podcasters because that's kind of like where all the energy is right now and all the investment. But then somebody was like, hey, you need to just pick one as a starting point and do the whole land and expand strategy. Like just land and say, we repurpose your podcasts, or pick one. And then over time, continue to layer in value propositions that have dedicated landing pages for webinars, dedicated landing pages for sales calls, or whatever makes sense. So that's the strategy I'm following. Okay. I'll just talk about one of these challenges. I guess I'll just take this first one I had in the notes, which is basically like, I'm at this point now where it's like I'm doing a lot of this stuff myself still. And so I'm kind of doing the sales. I'm kind of doing all the admin that goes with that, the invoicing and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm still doing some of the delivery, right? And I'm at this point now where it's like, should I hire a bunch of folks to fully outsource the delivery and just make peace with the fact that like I'm going to spend my nights and weekends working on something that I only bring home 20% of the revenue which at $3,000 a month, like isn't a crazy amount of money. Or do I keep kind of doing it myself and just, embrace the fact that like it'll build slowly over time. And by the end of this year, we're at $10,000 a month or something. And I'm keeping half of that, like that's what I'm wrestling with right now. I don't expect to have an answer on this call necessarily, but what are your thoughts on that? Are you wrestling with that with Editor Ninja? I'm guessing since you are also running Credo, like you're hiring right out of the gate and taking DIY out of it. But
yeah, it's funny with Credo because when I first started it, I did everything for quite a while and like would pull in a contractor every now and then. But with Editor Ninja, it's like I've already got a team of 3. It's me and two editors. And as we sign on, basically like I have to bring on a new editor for every 2 new customers that we get. So like as we sign in new customers, I have to bring on more editors. So like, if I can close some of this like sales pipeline I have, in my CRM, which I finally got last week, then I'm gonna have to bring on a few more editors, right? And so like it's pretty quickly growing. So like I'm not an editor, right? So like this business is interesting because it's kind of forcing me to have to build a team, of people that can deliver. Because I could have delivered on, SEO projects like back in the day, with Credo. So it's kind of a different approach. And I think what I do and the way that I'm thinking about it is like, I kind of set like specific goals for myself. It's like at this point I'm going to do this, right? And so it comes back to knowing your numbers that like, if you're taking home 20% of the revenue that you're making, right? I would say that should be like 30 to 35 ideally for you, after all other expenses. Of course, you're in like reinvesting mode and that sort of thing to really like get it going. And then you can kind of trim back some of that stuff, right? You pay the 5K and you get the website and that sort of thing. But also saying that like, at some point you are way more valuable doing the marketing, doing the sales, etc., and then having a team built around delivering it. Because the challenge early on with any business like this is, especially when you can do it, when you can do the work, you can do the repurposing, that sort of thing. You are going to very quickly, if you sign on 3 more customers, you are very quickly going to be the bottleneck and you're going to have to scale. So I think it's can you handle, if you're at 10K MRR, can you be doing all of these things? If not, like basically say like, okay, once we hit whatever 4K, 5K MRR, then you need to have in place this team that's going to be able to deliver most of the things, right? And you're still doing the QA, but by 10K, then you're going to have a project manager that's doing the QA and you basically need them, 15 hours a week, right? To make sure that like assets are good to go and stuff is getting back, that kind of thing. So I would basically set like, just knowing how many hours it takes and, kind of what you're best at and what you enjoy working on and that sort of thing. I would kind of set goals and say at this point, I'm going to need to hire this person or I'm going to need to find this person, so that you don't become that bottleneck, in the business to keep it from growing.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a triggering event, right? Like there's some kind of, whether that's financial or it's number of clients or something like that. It's like, hey, when X happens, go find yourself a project manager or whatever you're going to do and move it out that way. But
exactly.
I think it's worth mentioning because it is basically saying, between investing back in the business and hiring or outsourcing all the delivery type of stuff, like you might only make $500, $800 a month from $3,000 a month recurring revenue. That might be all that you take home after everything. And you just kind of know, which is interesting because like I don't need the money. Like I have a day job. I get paid well at my day job. Like I don't need the money, but I still think that way. So I can't be the only one that like looks at the numbers like that. Especially because it's like it's my nights and weekends, right? Like I could be doing any number of other things. I could be watching Netflix. I could be reading a book. I could be doing other stuff. But I'm sitting in front of the computer still hammering away at this. So I think that's really where the baggage comes from. It's just something you gotta let go of. Okay, cool. Let's hear an update from the Editor Ninja side.
Yeah. And I would also say like in the early days of a business, right? Like you're figuring out the processes, you're kind of building the bank account, right? Like I'm a big fan of the book Profit First, by Greg Crabtree is his name. Like it really helped me out with my other business. And so I'm really thinking about that way as well, really keeping an eye on like what's our margin, but also making sure that we have like a couple months of, basically he says 2 months of expenses in the bank at all times. With my other business, we have 4, because I'm quite risk averse as an entrepreneur actually. And so with Editor Ninja, like I've not paid myself a cent from that business. With Credo, I did not pay myself a cent from that business for 9 months, from the time I started it to the time I to the time I paid myself. It was like September to June, simply because I didn't need the money because I was consulting, etc. Like I don't need the money, from Editor Ninja at this point. It will feel good to start paying myself, but like at this point, I'm like, what? Like an extra $1,000 a month isn't going to make a difference to me, right? If I could pay myself that from Editor Ninja. So like, but eventually I will, and I'll kind of stair step my way into, into paying myself a salary and, taking distributions at first and then paying myself a salary and that kind of thing. So, it just kind of depends on your own like individual, needs. I know there's a lot of people out there that are starting a side business because they want that extra money, right? And so yes, start paying yourself, whether it's $500 a month or something like that. And as your business grows, then pay yourself more, but have a certain kind of amount that you need to have in your bank account and a certain percentage that you're paying yourself, whether it's 20% or something like that. And it all comes back to the margin as well, right? Like, you
Right.
said with Castaway, whether it's like 20% or 30% or something like that, like I think Editor Ninja's at like a 50 to 60% margin, which is way more than what I thought it was going to be, which is super cool, which means we're going to be able to invest more in growth and all of that if I can get my freaking Google Ads account working, which I can update on. Yeah, I'll jump into my update. So basically what's happened in the last couple of weeks, it's been cool as I've gotten Editor Ninja off the ground that I've actually had like quite a bit of interest in it, which is what I had hoped for. I'm doing 2 to 3 demos, like sales calls a week, which is pretty cool. And I signed on a big customer a few weeks ago, which, dramatically affected our existing MRR, but it also meant that I had to bring on a new editor, which was cool. It was a pretty seamless onboarding. I'm actually really lucky with editors because in a two-sided business like this, finding, you kind of have to balance supply and demand. And with Credo, it's been flipped, but with Editor Ninja, it's flipped back where basically as I bring on customers, then I need to bring on editors. Versus with Credo, there's always been way more interest on the agency side than on the demand side. Has been way harder to generate, which is the same way with Editor Ninja. But like I also have an ace in the hole with editors because my lead editor Sophia, who is also my assistant at Credo, she went to school she got her MFA in literature and editing and that sort of thing. So she has a network of 7,000 professionally trained editors. So wow. As we need editors, we just tap into that, right? So it's like just straight ace in the hole. It's not going to be a problem to bring on editors at all. So bringing on our latest editor was great. I did realize there are a few kind of processes we need to build out around like onboarding. Like she literally pinged me like 30 minutes ago about like, hey, can we like hop on a call? I'd love to get some feedback from my first couple of weeks and like that sort of thing. So it made me realize, and like with her first document that went out, we had the same problem as with the very first document that Sophia edited, where they just made the edits directly in the doc and didn't suggest them, just made them directly in. And so the customer was like, what edits were made? I'm like, shoot. So we're actually building out those processes from the start, about like, this is how we edit. This is like, you make a copy, you are on suggesting mode. Like it's this level of editing, like that sort of thing. So that's been, good learning, but also learning that I'm taking from my other company and my experience into this new one, that like, hey, we just need documentation, just so that we can scale and bring new people in. And it's not like one-on-one training. This is what we expect, but like everyone knows what we expect, and the level of editing, which also makes it easy to message to our customers about what they get. So that's been a good learning experience there. I'm going to skip two.
Question about one of those,
good.
Or I guess share an observation is like the training piece. Well, first of all, the competitive advantage of having access to that many editors is insane, because that's another bottleneck I have is like what I'm trying to hire people to do is so obscure. Like not many people are doing this. Like there are plenty of YouTube video editors out there, or more generalist video editors that are like, I'm doing commercials and I'm doing case studies and I'm doing whatever. I work with this YouTuber and that kind of thing. But like when I come to them and I say, hey, can you chop up 60-second clips for TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that? Like, do you do that? And it's changing a little bit as it gets more popular. Like you see more and more folks do this, but most of them are like, what are you talking about? Like, I guess I can do that. I don't know how to price that. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to figure that out, because like I have margins to think about. So the talent pool, I think, is something that, like, to your point, like ace in the hole, that's awesome that you can have that, because that's something I'm struggling with. The other thing I was thinking about is the onboarding and the training. I almost think like it's probably worth having a course like hosted by Podia or in LearnDash or something like that, where it's like, hey, new editor, like here are 5 lessons on how we edit. Like I know how you edit. Here's how we edit here at Editor Ninja. And if you have to take this to get your first assignment, and you have to send me like proof of completion or whatever, whether that's like a screenshot or something like that. But that's what I'm thinking is like, here's how we create video clips, and I'm thinking about building the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that would be really valuable for you as well. It would help you kind of sell people in. For me, with Editor Ninja, I mean, the editing that we're doing is what they've been trained to do, and they're just like, what level of editing do we need? Are we like rearranging words and like cutting it down to like, this is 3,000 words, it needs to be cut down to 1,700? Like, no, but saying like, hey, there's, like your writer was kind of not fantastic, and they have like first and second and third person and passive and active voice and all of this, right? So they're providing that feedback, and then we're finding that customers need to actually go back to their writer and be like, hey, you need to fix this because we said active voice and that kind of thing, and you just didn't meet the brief, which we're finding a lot actually, which is interesting in the marketing space. I think there's just a lot of like writers out there that are not great, which is why a lot of content coming out is not great. So we're trying to help companies just kind of level up all of that. But I think it's also interesting to like, it's interesting for you with the like, YouTube editor, like video editors and social and graphic designers and that kind of thing. Is like, what are they currently doing? So for Editor Ninja, like our most recent editor that came on, they're an MFA like level trained, editor and literature person, but they were making ends meet by working at Starbucks. They're making like $16 an hour working at Starbucks, and I can pay them $23 an hour to do what they were trained to do. Right. So like, it's a super easy sell. And as I have more like work for them, like they could, honestly, their goal is that they quit working at the coffee shop to, be able just to do, what they've been trained to do and what they love to do. So, and that actually works quite well in my margins. Versus for you, it's like if they're making, they're billing $40 an hour, right? Like, are you going to be able to make that work, for YouTube editing? It's just like that's where the economics get really interesting in these businesses.
Yeah, I think it is tough because they're used to a lot of it's all over the place. First of all, like we have one really great video editor that like he's kind of in that same situation, like working at a coffee shop, making ends meet. But he had this personal YouTube channel where he was like reviewing mechanical keyboards, and it had 20,000 subscribers. And I'm like, dude, like this is great. And the quality of the videos you put out are great. So like, I know you're doing these 20-minute like top-down shots of mechanical keyboards and assembling those and like doing the ASMR like sound recording or whatever. But like, what if I just ask you to do these things? And that worked out great. But like a lot of these folks are, hey, I'm a contract YouTube editor for this big account here that makes $500,000 a year. And whatever they pay me, 15,000 or 20,000, it's like, I don't know. Like I can't hire that kind of person. So it is going to be, and I think part of the challenge is like the diversity. Like you do need kind of a graphic designer to do the graphical elements around the video. And then you need the video editor to look at the coloration and the audio quality and clip it up. And then you need somebody with like a journalistic angle and to pick the insightful pieces of the episode and say, clip this, clip this, clip this, and then know the audience. So I think it's that diversity that makes the hiring part hard. And maybe that's part of the struggle too with the whole DIY versus, contracting debate that I brought up earlier was like, I don't know, I'm not just trying to find one type of person. I'm trying to find like 3 different types of people and build these pods or these little teams. And there's some complexity there, but I don't want to derail you. So that's the
you're fine.
Operational update, I guess.
Yeah. And your challenge is that like your business has these natural built-in like process, and you need like 3 different very real skill sets versus with me, it's like I built out our tech myself, within WordPress, and basically it's like me kind of PMing it and then getting it to an editor, and the editor sends it back to me, and then the system notifies me that it's back, and I make sure that it gets sent back on the day that it's due. Like pretty straightforward. I don't have those extra layers, but at some point my goal is, and what we were talking about with like setting goals for like at this point, then I'm going to do this. Like we're at like 2,600 MRR right now, something like that, which for being 6-7 weeks in the market, I'm pretty happy with. But by like 4 or 5K, if I sign on like 2-3 more customers, right? Cause we're editing 4,000 to 5,000 words a day right now. Once we're at like 15, I'm going to need someone else to be doing the like PM stuff, like get work assigned, make sure it gets back and get it reviewed. It should be an editor reviewing it, not me. Let's be honest. So like, how do we get editors reviewing each other's work? Like all these workflow things are going to come up as we get to more of a scale. But we're not like, super heavy with like all these different skills are needed to make this thing work. And so our pricing can be lower versus you're going to have to price higher in order to be able to afford the quality work to be able to get all these things done. But to that point, talking about like kind of scaling up, I've got 6 figures of deals, like potential deals in the pipeline already, which is awesome. But what I'm realizing is these things are taking longer to close than what I thought they were going to take, right? I've probably got 8-10 deals, something like that, potential deals in the pipeline. And what I've found is that, there's not much interest on like the lower level where someone's like, I've got 4 pieces a month to get edited, right? Because like 4 pieces a month, even if it's like 10,000, 12,000 words, at, $400 a month, like it's probably not really, it's not really worth it to them, which is interesting. But what I'm finding is that there are a lot of companies that they're producing 100, 200,000 words a month for themselves or for their clients. And so I'm actually wondering, is Editor Ninja actually kind of a higher volume thing? And also, so like, someone signs on and it's $2,000 a month, but they're putting 150,000 words, or $2,000 a month, I guess would be like, 120,000 words, something like that is kind of like where they would be capped, based off of our pricing model. But really what I'm thinking is like, how do I get people to like, with agencies, it's all about baking it into their workflow. So they're like, okay, we want to sign on, but we need to figure out who's going to be owning it internally, who's going to be responsible for it. How do we price it in so that like we can basically build this into our pricing for our new customers? How do we go back to our old customers and, make these margins work, all of that. And so I'm realizing that like a lot of agencies want to put a lot of work through Editor Ninja, but I actually need to get them on the like the start on the bottom like unlimited level, with 1 or 2 customers, right? And then they scale up as they go. So as they grow, their engagement with us grows. And so I haven't nailed that pitch yet. For like, let's start here. Make sure that it works well into your system, right? That you figure out how it works into your workflow, and then we scale up from there. As opposed to like I don't want someone coming in paying us $3,000 a month for 200,000 words, and they don't have their own like workflows together, right? To make it actually work, because then like it's going to be a pain in the butt for me. It's going to be a pain in the butt for my editors. It's going to be a pain in the butt for them, and they're going to churn out. And so I would rather not do that than oversell them and then just like kind of figure it out as they go, because that like heartache just isn't worth it to me at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because like I hear that lower level $400 a month, and like that sounds interesting to me as the marketing leader at The Good. Like that's roughly like we get maybe 6 or 8 pieces out a month, mm-hmm. and they're 1,000 to 1,500 words a piece, and so it's like that's kind of where we would be, but we're a different kind of client than you signing on with a content marketing agency that serves multiple clients themselves and is funneling all of that content out. So it's almost like, I could see a future where you have a dedicated landing page for each with different messaging and value propositions. But as a starting point, maybe you pick one. And to your point, you just say, I only work with content marketing agencies. I work with like Animals and folks like that. Mm-hmm. And Brian Castle at Audience Ops. I forget who bought it. I think JD Graffam bought them. So it's JD Graffam now. But yeah, you go and you like reach out to those folks and say, hey, can we plug into your production process and help you produce a better final product for your clients? But the tweak there is that like they have a set deadline, and it's like, okay, so the client's expecting this on Friday, the writer got it on Monday, they delivered the draft on Wednesday. Can you turn it around in those 2 days? Because if you can't, we can't work with you. And like, that's not a place you want to be at either, because you have your own timelines that probably don't align with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've realized that it needs to be a little bit longer of kind of a turnaround, and it all depends on like how much work they have in their queue. And if they need like something turned around quicker, like they can prioritize it, but it's also not going to start getting edited until the next day. So like we don't have an option for a rush job at this point. Maybe we will, maybe it'll be like an add-on, right? Another like $29 or something like that, like to rush this out, or just like, hey, I need another piece, and then basically it's like a short-term, second lane, for them to be able to do it. But then we kind of get into like the nickel and diming. It's like $29 here, $29 there. Do we bill after the fact, or, before it actually gets done? Like, what does that look like? It's just a lot of like infrastructure, challenges. So at this point, I'm trying to keep it simple, right? Because otherwise it's like we get into custom work. We get into, it just becomes a lot more complicated, and this business is meant to be simple, right? It's like you upload your content to your queue, when it's going into editing, when it's coming back, and it happens, right? And you don't have to question whether it's going to or not. It's an interesting kind of model there, because I mean, you one of the updates that you had for Castaway that you've been thinking about is like full service versus productized. And I'm finding that like when I'm talking to people with Editor Ninja, people are like, and maybe this is because of my like being known in the SEO world and knowing a lot of people in the SEO world, they're like, well, but can you do keyword research for us? Can you do content briefs for us for new content? Like this kind of thing. And I'm like, Editor Ninja, we edit content, right? We're not an SEO agency, right? It seems like people are trying to push us in that direction. I'm just constantly have to be like, no, we don't do that, right? Which is just to like what you were mentioning about just being willing to say no more than you say yes. But the businessman, the entrepreneur in me is like, well, technically I could do that, right? And like maybe we offer some of this as like add-on, services, like we're updating someone's content for SEO. but they don't know what content to prioritize. And so, hey, pay us $500 and we'll go and we'll build out your queue, right? And then we'll like you sign on for whatever 3 months like minimum, and we'll actually manage your queue for you, and we'll make sure that it gets uploaded and gets sent back to you. It's edited directly in your CMS. So you don't have to do anything. You just pay us the money and it gets done, and we tell you when it's done. But I'm really trying to balance that, and also like early on, like prioritizing learning and getting revenue in the door and all of that, versus like longer term, this thing needs to be like just a rock solid process. So that it's not custom work and it's not an agency. But most people don't have the productized service like framework in their mind. They're like, either you're a SaaS or you're an agency, right? And you and I both know there's very much a middle ground there, but it's an education problem, which I'm not sure how to get over.
Yeah, it's really tough because like I can see both sides of the argument, like I'm seeing more, they're not really castaway competitors, but I'm seeing more production houses add promotion onto the backside of what they're doing. And that's the full service approach. I'm like, yeah, I definitely get the appeal of that. Like that's a sexy headline. Like if you don't have a B2B podcast yet for your business, we can help you do it from start to finish. Like with ideation, we'll do the editing of the audio. Like you just show up and host, send us the recordings, and we'll do everything after that. And I've definitely like entertained that. And I didn't come out of the gates with that because like the editing piece, I think, is a commodity service at this point. There are 1,000 editing agencies in there, but I can definitely see why a client would say, I just want to work with one entity that'll do it all for me, because I don't want to have to worry about the editor having their timeline and then fitting Castaway into that. And like I've even gone to the point where in a sales call I'll say, look, we don't work great in stream. Like we work great like you hit publish and we do our stuff the week after to give it that second bump of awareness. After you on launch day, you're going to send it out to your email list or whatever, people are going to listen. We want to be that second and third wave that come after that. Or if you have a show that has a big archive that's gathering dust, we help you give all that stuff a second life because it's been neglected and nobody has listened to it for a while. So I'll even tell people like that's where we fit in. We don't fit in midstream just because unless you're going to hand us off a final edited file, then we don't work great inside of a tight timeline, like turning things around in a week, which is hard to do. But could we add editing to the service? Absolutely. Like we could go end to end, but that's a little bit of a different business model. And then you got yet another role on the team that you're worrying about. So there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. In your instance, it's just like the editing piece. It's kind of the same way, right? Where like if you're working with a content marketing agency, they're doing the ideation and brainstorming. They're probably doing some keyword research. They're doing the writing briefs. They hand it off to the writer. They get the draft back. And then somehow you got to find a way to squeeze Editor Ninja in there before their client's expecting a finished product. So it's definitely messy, but I can also see why, a client would say, well, can you just be my content development and editing agency in one? Like, that it's challenging, man. It's a tough place to be.
Yeah, totally. And so it really makes me wonder if like we get baked more into the agencies, like, and to be honest, we don't have any like content marketing agencies signed on yet. Like I got a bunch of them in the queue, like in the in various deal stages, but like none of them have actually signed on yet. So the question is like, if we're going to get that, which is where the volume comes from and the higher ticket subscriptions come from, how do we have to be integrated into their process, right? And like, and I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet. Right now, it's all in-house teams that are producing content for themselves. Which is, it's agencies producing content for themselves. Credo's signed up to. I'm using my own product, right, with my other company, to get our stuff, edited, new stuff edited, old stuff updated, etc. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to kind of figure out who's the ideal customer and kind of like what does the process look like for the different customers, in-house versus agency. I thought agencies were going to be the ideal customer. Not so convinced at this point after even just a few weeks of kind of messaging towards it.
Yeah, that's too bad because that's what I was going to suggest is like the next time I go to an agency, I would say don't try to inject us into an existing client account. Like somebody that's in your pipeline, present this to them and extend your deadline or your timeline for delivering a piece by 2 or 3 days or whatever. And like build in that Editor Ninja time on the front end where you're setting expectations with that end client and also increase the price accordingly. And that would be way smoother than saying like, hey, I'm a content agency already working with client A. I want to drop Editor Ninja into this process, but they've kind of been conditioned to expect a turnaround time of 7 business days or whatever. And now I'm going to ask them to make it 10. Like that feels troublesome there. So,
right.
Yeah, I know we're coming up against our time. So is there anything else you want to cover really quick before we bring it in for a landing?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered kind of a bunch of the things that I really, wanted to cover. Maybe let's end it up with like what are we working on coming up. For me it is, well, why don't you tell me with Castaway, what are you kind of focusing on for the next few weeks? What's top of mind?
Yeah, I think before we talk the next time, I want to have that card site that I mentioned to you just live and out there. I want to have that next V1 out there so I can make a good first impression for any new leads that are coming in. And as part of that, like I have a bunch of people that replied to that original tweet back last April or whenever it was, where I got all that traction. And I need to reach back out to those folks and say, like, look, we're taking this seriously now. Here's our presence. It has pricing. It has deliverables. It has all that stuff that you're asking me via email anyway. So here's the update. And if this is still a need for you, like, we'd love to jump in and get started. I think that'll juice some sales there, at least start some conversations. So yeah, I think that's my main focus. And then outside of that, like, I'm still going to try to build out the talent pool or build out the bench. And I need to, like, I think I'm kind of already leaning in the way of contracting more than doing it myself going forward, especially to your point, like if I land 1 or 2 more clients, like I'm at max capacity. I'll be doing like 1 or 2 a.m. every night. And then I can't also get up and go to the gym and be effective in my 9 to 5 and be a dad and be a husband. That's too much. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and start making some progress toward building out that bench and basically asking people. I know they can't stand by and wait for assignments, but just saying like, hey, is it okay if I send you an opportunity when it comes through? I'm expecting something in the next 14 to 30 days, something like that. And if it works for you, like I'd love to sign you on and make it a recurring thing kind of. So just kind of lay the groundwork for that. I think those are my 2 big efforts.
I like it. Pre-selling it makes sense. So for me, the 2 things I'm working on, one is I want to get a couple more customers on board. I want to get a couple of these across the line. There's a couple agencies that are like super close that I'm like, all right, let's like actually get this committed, you know? So I'm definitely working on that, kind of working those deals. And then I'm also, I'm an SEO and content guy, right? So I'm publishing, I've got some content coming up that I'm really excited about. I'm kind of tired of the like how to, what is like sort of content, like it works, but like it drives traffic and it drives leads, but it's just kind of boring to me. So I'm going to keep writing some of that, but I'm really trying to do just like bigger like content studies. So one that will be out by the time this episode publishes is I actually took 799 B2B SaaS homepages and I ran them through Screaming Frog to find the number of and percentage of them that have grammar and spelling issues on their homepage. And it was insanely high. Like it was unbelievably high to me, James. I was thinking like 30%, it's 90% plus. And so I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy, right? Like, so I'm going to publish that. I've got one coming up for e-commerce, and then I'm going to do one for like, a piece about like, length of average length of blog posts, which I'm actually going to double dip, and do for both Credo and Editor Ninja. Cause I could take that same data and publish it the 2 places, because both audiences are going to resonate with it. So, so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. So really trying to just like keep increasing audience, and then increasing number of leads coming in, and then really get some of these leads across the finish line, to actually being paying customers. So that's my focus for the next few weeks.
That's awesome. And not to put more work on your plate, but I'd love to see like some teardowns. I bet you could do well with like article teardowns of like popular pieces that have been published and are live, and just say like, here's how this could be improved, or like, get one of your editors almost doing pro bono work. Like you still pay them, but like doing these that aren't necessarily paying client work, and then putting that on YouTube, putting that out on social media. Like, here's this piece and here's an editor's review of that, and here are like 5 ways that it could have been better, or 5 mistakes that are maybe not giving a great first impression, missing data elements, broken links, whatever you're looking for. And
Interesting.
Just kind of like a sample of like the work that we try to do, but if you get those brands in there, it's like, yeah, here's something that Ahrefs could do to improve this piece, right? Like, and people are going to click on that and watch the first couple of minutes at least, I'm sure. So I don't know, just food for thought.
Brilliant idea. I will definitely noodle on that. I've got a couple of these like bigger studies coming up, but then that's an awesome idea. So I appreciate it. I will probably execute on that one.
Nice. All right. We'll touch base here in a week or so, and look forward to getting this one out for everybody to listen to.
Sounds good. See you later, everybody.